The match flared. A tiny supernova in the dim garage. And Chief Daniel Harper watched the only photo of his son with him curl into ash. Ethan's smile, so bright in that frozen moment, blackened and crumbled, as did the face of the boy beside him, Jasper. The one Daniel refused to name. He told himself it was justice, but the ache in his chest screamed otherwise. In the small town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, where Daniel Harper's badge gleamed like a shield of authority, secrets were currency, and Ethan's was the most dangerous of all. At 21, Ethan Harper was the golden boy captain of the high school football team, now a junior at Penn State, with a smile that could charm the stars from the sky. But he carried a truth he'd hidden since he was 16, one that could unravel the perfect image his father had crafted. Ethan was gay, and he was in love with Jasper Cole, the quiet artist who'd moved to town 3 years ago. Their love had been a fragile rebellion, blooming in stolen moments, late night drives along the Susquehanna River, whispered confessions under the bleachers, hands intertwined in the shadows of Willow Creek's oak-lined streets. Jasper, with his sharp cheekbones and eyes that held storms, was everything Ethan wasn't: unapologetic, unafraid, and unyielding. He'd grown up in foster homes, his defiance forged in years of being told he wasn't enough. Yet, in Ethan's arms, he found a softness he'd never known. Their only photo together, taken at last year's county fair, was a Polaroid of them laughing, arms slung around each other, the Ferris wheel glowing behind them. It was Ethan's treasure, kept hidden in his childhood bedroom until Daniel found it. Daniel Harper wasn't a monster. He was a man of order, a widower who'd raised Ethan alone after his wife, Sarah, died when Ethan was 10. The badge defined him. It was his compass in a world he believed was slipping into chaos. Homosexuality, to him, was a sin, a deviation, a threat to the legacy he'd built for his son. When he found the photo tucked in Ethan's old desk, his world tilted. He didn't confront Ethan. He didn't yell. He took the photo to the garage, struck a match, and watched it burn, convincing himself he was saving his son. But Ethan knew. He'd come home for spring break, expecting a week of tense silences with his father, only to find the scorched remnants in the garage trash. The betrayal cut deeper than any words could. He stood there, staring at the ashes, his heart a war zone of rage and grief. Jasper had been his anchor, the one who made him feel whole. And now, his father had tried to erase him. Ethan didn't tell Jasper right away. He couldn't. Jasper was already on edge, his part-time job at the local diner barely covering rent for the tiny apartment he shared with 2 other artists. Willow Creek wasn't kind to outsiders, especially ones like Jasper, who wore his queerness like armor-earring in one ear, paint-stained jeans, and a smirk that dared the world to take a swing. Ethan loved that about him, but it also terrified him. His father's influence ran deep. As police chief, Daniel could make life hell for anyone who crossed him. And Jasper was an easy target. That night, Ethan drove to Jasper's apartment, the Polaroid's absence a weight in his pocket. Jasper opened the door, his usual grin faltering when he saw Ethan's face. "What's wrong?" he asked, pulling Ethan inside. The apartment smelled of turpentine and coffee. Jasper's latest canvas, a swirl of blues and reds propped against the wall. "He burned it," Ethan whispered, voice breaking. "The photo. Our photo." Jasper's eyes darkened, but he didn't speak. He pulled Ethan into a hug, fierce and unyielding, as if he could shield him from the world. "He doesn't get to decide who we are," Jasper said finally, his voice low but steady. Not him. Not this town. But Ethan wasn't so sure. Willow Creek was a pressure cooker, and his father held the valve. The next day, rumors started swirling, whispers at the diner, sidelong glances at the gas station. Someone had seen Ethan and Jasper together. Too close. Too obvious. By noon, Daniel had called Ethan to the station. His voice cold over the phone. "We need to talk. Son." The police station was a squat brick building, its walls lined with photos of Daniel shaking hands with mayors, governors, heroes. Ethan sat across from his father's desk, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Daniel leaned forward, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. "People are talking, Ethan," he said, "about you and that Cole boy." "He's not that Cole boy," Ethan snapped, his voice shaking. "His name is Jasper." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You're throwing your life away. This phase will ruin you. You think I don't know what's best for you?" Ethan stood, fists clenched. "You burned the only photo I had of us. You don't get to tell me what's best." The silence that followed was a chasm. Daniel's face was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something: guilt, maybe, or fear. Ethan didn't wait for him to respond. He stormed out, the door slamming behind him, unaware that the confrontation was just the beginning. Jasper was waiting for Ethan at their spot by the river, a secluded bend where the water whispered secrets to the willows. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and spring blossoms. But Ethan's heart was a storm. He told Jasper everything: the confrontation, the rumors, the way his father's words had carved into him like a knife. Jasper listened, his fingers tracing patterns in the dirt, his silence a kind of strength Ethan envied. "We can't stay here," Jasper said finally, his voice steady but urgent. "Not if he's coming for us." Ethan's stomach twisted. Leaving Willow Creek meant leaving everything: his friends, his college plans, the life he'd always known. But staying meant living under his father's shadow. And that was no life at all. "Where would we go?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Anywhere," Jasper said, his eyes fierce. "Philly, New York, somewhere we can be us. I've got some money saved. It's not much, but it's enough to start." Ethan wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at him. His father wasn't just a man. He was the law in Willow Creek. If Daniel wanted to find them, he would. And Jasper, with his record of petty teenage trouble, shoplifting, vandalism from his foster care days, was an easy target for Daniel's wrath. The next few days were a blur of tension. Ethan avoided home, crashing on Jasper's couch, the two of them plotting in hushed tones. Jasper's roommates, Mia and Theo, were supportive but wary. "Your dad's not going to let this go," Mia warned, her voice soft but firm. "He's got eyes everywhere." She wasn't wrong. By the end of the week, Daniel had upped the pressure. Jasper was pulled over twice for routine checks, his car searched, his attitude noted in reports that Daniel made sure reached Ethan. At the diner, Jasper's boss cut his hours, citing customer complaints. Ethan saw his father's hand in every move, a calculated campaign to isolate Jasper and force Ethan to choose. But Ethan was done choosing. On Friday night, he and Jasper made a plan: they'd leave in a week. After Ethan's last exam, they'd drive to Philadelphia, where Jasper had a friend who could get them a cheap sublet. It wasn't much, but it was freedom. Ethan felt a spark of hope, fragile but real, until Sunday morning. When everything unraveled, they were at the diner, sharing a plate of fries, when two of Daniel's deputies walked in. Their badges gleamed. Their eyes locked on Jasper. "Jasper Cole," one said, voice flat. "You're coming with us." "For what?" Ethan demanded, standing so fast his chair scraped the floor. The deputy ignored him, cuffing Jasper's wrists with a practiced ease. "Suspicion of theft," he said. "Reported at the hardware store." It was a lie, and Ethan knew it. Jasper hadn't been near the hardware store in weeks. This was Daniel's doing, a power play to break them apart. As the deputies led Jasper out, he looked back at Ethan, his eyes saying everything. Don't give up. Don't let him win. Ethan's blood boiled. He drove straight to the station, ignoring the receptionist's protests as he barged into his father's office. Daniel was behind his desk, calm as ever, but his eyes were cold steel. "You're making a mistake," Ethan said, his voice trembling with rage. "You can't just arrest him for nothing." "It's not nothing," Daniel said, leaning back. "That boy's trouble, Ethan. Always has been. I'm protecting you." "Protecting me?" Ethan laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're destroying me." Daniel's face didn't change, but his hands gripped the desk a little tighter. "You'll thank me one day," he said. "When you're married, with kids, living a normal life." Ethan turned and left without another word. He wasn't going to beg. He was going to fight. Jasper sat in the holding cell, his back against the cold concrete wall, his mind racing. The theft charge was flimsy based on a vague report from a store clerk who claimed Jasper had looked suspicious. No evidence. No witnesses. Just Daniel Harper's word. Jasper knew how this worked. He'd seen it in foster care, where kids like him were guilty until proven otherwise. But this time, it wasn't just about him. It was about Ethan, and that made it personal. Ethan spent the day rallying support. He called Mia and Theo, who spread the word to their network of artists and activists. By evening, a small crowd had gathered outside the station, holding signs that read, "Free Jasper" and "Love is not a crime." Ethan stood at the front, his voice hoarse as he spoke into a borrowed megaphone. "This isn't justice," he said. "This is my father using his power to control me." The protest drew attention, local news, social media, even a few curious townsfolk. Daniel watched from his office window, his face a mask of control. But Ethan knew he was rattled. The chief wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by his own son. Jasper was released the next morning. The charges dropped for lack of evidence. Ethan was waiting outside, his heart leaping when Jasper walked out, his smirk intact but his eyes tired. They didn't speak. They just hugged, fierce and desperate, in front of the whole town. For the first time, Ethan didn't care who saw. But freedom came with a cost. Daniel doubled down, spreading word that Jasper was a bad influence, and Ethan was confused. The town split. Some rallied behind Ethan and Jasper, drawn to their courage. Others sided with Daniel, clinging to tradition and authority. Ethan's old football coach stopped him at the gas station, his voice low. "You're throwing away a good life, kid. Your dad's just trying to help." Ethan didn't respond. He was done explaining himself. That night, Jasper and Ethan sat on the apartment's fire escape, the stars sharp above them. "We need to leave sooner," Jasper said. "He's not going to stop." Ethan nodded, but his heart was heavy. Leaving meant cutting ties. Maybe forever. He thought of his mom, how she'd always told him to be kind, to be brave. Would she have understood? He liked to think so. The next day, they started packing. Jasper's friend in Philly confirmed the sublet, and Mia offered to drive them to the bus station. But as they loaded Jasper's beat-up Toyota, a police cruiser pulled up. Daniel stepped out, his face unreadable. "Ethan," he said, his voice low. "I need you to come home." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear in his gut. Daniel's eyes flickered to Jasper, then back to Ethan. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You're my son, and he's my future." Ethan shot back, stepping closer to Jasper. "You can't burn that away." Daniel didn't respond. He just got back in his cruiser and drove off, leaving Ethan and Jasper standing in the dust, their hands clasped tight. The bus to Philadelphia was old, its seats worn and smelling faintly of diesel. But to Ethan and Jasper, it was a lifeline. They sat in the back, hands intertwined, watching Willow Creek fade into the distance. Ethan's heart was a tangle of relief and grief. He'd left a note for his father. Short and final, "I'm choosing my truth. I hope one day you can too." Jasper's head rested on his shoulder, his breathing steady, a quiet promise that they were in this together. Philadelphia was a shock of noise and color after Willow Creek's muted tones. The sublet was a cramped studio in South Philly, with peeling paint and a single window overlooking a noisy street. But it was theirs. Jasper hung his canvases on the walls, splashes of blue and red that made the space feel alive. Ethan enrolled in community college, picking up credits to finish his degree. They worked odd jobs, Ethan at a bookstore, Jasper at an art supply store, scraping by, but building something real. For a while, it felt like freedom. They walked the city hand in hand, unafraid of who might see. They kissed in coffee shops, laughed in dive bars, and made love in their tiny bed, the world outside their window fading away. But Daniel's shadow lingered. Ethan's phone buzzed with occasional texts from his father, curt messages like, "Call me," or "This isn't you." He ignored them, but each one was a pinprick to his heart. Jasper noticed. "You don't have to cut him out completely," he said one night, as they lay tangled in the sheets. "He's your dad. Maybe he'll come around." Ethan shook his head. "He burned our photo. Jas. He doesn't want me to be me." Jasper didn't push. He just held Ethan tighter, his silence a kind of understanding Ethan had never known before. Months passed, and their life in Philly took root. They made friends, other queer kids, artists, dreamers who welcomed them into a community that felt like home. But Willow Creek wasn't done with them. One evening, as Ethan was closing up the bookstore, he got a call from Mia. "Your dad's been asking around," she said. "He's been to the diner, the art store, even my place. He's looking for you." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What does he want?" "He didn't say," Mia replied. "But he looked different. Not angry. Sad. Maybe." Ethan didn't know what to make of it. Part of him wanted to believe his father could change, but the memory of the burned photo was a wall he couldn't climb. He told Jasper, expecting him to be angry, but Jasper just shrugged. "Let him come," he said. "He can't touch us here." But Daniel did come. One rainy afternoon, as Ethan was shelving books, he looked up to see his father standing in the doorway, his uniform replaced by a plain jacket, his face lined with something Ethan hadn't seen before, vulnerability. "Ethan," Daniel said, his voice softer than Ethan had ever heard. Can we talk? Ethan's heart raced. He wanted to say no, to walk away, but something in his father's eyes stopped him. 5 minutes, he said, leading Daniel to a quiet corner of the store. Daniel didn't waste words. I was wrong, he said, his voice breaking. I thought I was protecting you, but I was protecting myself. From change. From fear. I miss you. Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to believe it. But trust was a fragile thing. You burned the only photo I had of me and Jasper, he said. You tried to erase him. Daniel looked down, his hands trembling. I know. And I'll never forgive myself for it. Ethan didn't know how to respond. His father's words hung in the air, heavy with regret. But they couldn't undo the past. The bookstore's quiet humpage turning. Customers murmuring felt like a buffer between them. A fragile space where truth could breathe. Ethan crossed his arms, his heart a battlefield of hope and hurt. I don't know if I can forgive you, Ethan said finally. Not yet. Daniel nodded, his eyes glistening. I don't expect you to. I needed you to know I'm trying. I'm reading, talking to people. I don't understand everything, but I want to. Ethan's chest ached. He'd spent so long hating his father's ignorance, his control, that this admission felt like a foreign language. Why now? He asked. Daniel hesitated, then pulled a small envelope from his pocket. I found this in your mom's things, he said. She wrote it before she died. For you. Ethan took the envelope, his hands shaking. Inside was a letter, Sarah's handwriting looping across the page. Ethan, my light. It began. Never let anyone tell you who to love. Be brave. Be kind. Be you. Tears blurred his vision. His mother had known. Somehow. Even back then. I didn't know she wrote that, Daniel said. If I had, maybe I wouldn't have been so afraid. Ethan folded the letter, tucking it into his pocket. It felt like a piece of his mother. A lifeline he hadn't known he needed. I need time, he told Daniel. And you need to prove it. Not just to me, but to Jasper. Daniel nodded, his face etched with determination. I will. That night, Ethan showed Jasper the letter. They sat on their tiny balcony, the city's lights sprawling below. Jasper read it silently, then handed it back, his eyes soft. She sounds like she was amazing, he said. She was, Ethan whispered. I wish you could have met her. Jasper took his hand. She's in you. You know. That's enough. Over the next few weeks, Daniel made good on his promise. He called Ethan, not to demand or control, but to ask questions awkward, earnest ones about Ethan's life, about Jasper. He sent a package with a new Polaroid camera, a note tucked inside, make new memories. Ethan was skeptical, but Jasper, ever the optimist, convinced him to give it a chance. They started small. Ethan invited Daniel to the bookstore for coffee, a neutral ground. Daniel was nervous, his hands fidgeting, but he listened as Ethan talked about his classes, his friends, his life with Jasper. For the first time, Ethan felt like his father was seeing him. Not the son he wanted, but the man he was. Jasper was harder to win over. He'd been burned too many times by foster parents, by small-town prejudice, by a world that didn't always make room for people like him. But when Daniel showed up at the art supply store with a set of expensive paints as a peace offering, Jasper's guard softened. Just a fraction. You don't buy forgiveness. Jasper said, his tone sharp but curious. I know, Daniel replied. I'm not trying to. I just want to know you. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Spring turned to summer, and Philadelphia became a canvas of heat and hustle. Ethan and Jasper's life together deepened. Their love a quiet strength against the city's chaos. They took photos with the new Polaroid, capturing moments Daniel could never burn. Jasper painting in the morning light. Ethan laughing at a street festival. Their hands linked on the subway. Each snapshot was a defiance, a proof of their resilience. Daniel's efforts continued, slow but steady. He joined a support group for parents of LGBTQ kids, something Ethan never thought he'd see. He sent texts with links to articles, asking for Ethan's thoughts. It was clumsy, sometimes cringeworthy, but it was real. Ethan began to see his father not as the unyielding chief, but as a man grappling with his own flaws, trying to rebuild what he'd broken. Jasper, though, remained cautious. He's got a long way to go, he told Ethan one night, as they washed dishes in their tiny kitchen. I'm not saying he can't change, but I don't trust him yet. Ethan nodded, understanding. Trust was earned, not given, and Daniel had a debt to pay. But when Daniel invited them to dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant in Philly, Jasper agreed to gon it for Daniel. But for Ethan, the dinner was awkward at first. Daniel asked about Jasper's art, stumbling over his words. Jasper answered politely, but kept his distance, his eyes scanning Daniel for any sign of insincerity. Ethan watched them both, his heart caught between hope and fear. But then Daniel said something that shifted the air. I was wrong about you, Jasper, he said, his voice low. I saw you as a threat, not a person. I'm sorry. Jasper blinked, his fork pausing midair. You hurt him, he said, nodding toward Ethan. That's not something you just apologize away. I know, Daniel said. But I'm here, and I'm trying. The rest of the dinner passed in tentative conversation, a fragile bridge being built. When they parted ways, Daniel hugged Ethan a real hug, not the stiff pat he'd grown up with. Jasper got a handshake, but it was enough. Back in their apartment, Jasper was quiet. Ethan waited, knowing he needed space. Finally, Jasper spoke. He's not the monster I thought he was, he said. But he's got to keep showing up. Ethan smiled, pulling Jasper close. He will. And so will we. The next month, Daniel visited again, this time bringing a photo album from Ethan's childhood. They sat on the studio's worn couch, flipping through memories. Ethan's first football game, his mom's smile, family trips to the lake. For the first time, Ethan felt like he could share his past with Jasper without losing his future. But Willow Creek wasn't entirely behind them. A local reporter, digging into Daniel's tenure as chief, published a story about the protest, painting Ethan and Jasper as victims of small-town prejudice. The article went viral, and suddenly, their story was everywhere in blogs, on X, in heated debates at the diner back home. Some called Daniel a bigot. Others defended him, saying he was just a father doing his best. Ethan didn't care about the noise. He cared about the man sitting across from him, trying to learn, trying to love him better. The viral article brought unexpected allies. A queer advocacy group in Philly reached out, offering Ethan and Jasper a platform to share their story. Jasper was hesitant. Publicity wasn't his thing, but Ethan saw it as a chance to take control of their narrative. They agreed to speak at a small community event, a fundraiser for LGBTQ youth. The night of the event, the community center was packed. Ethan stood at the podium, Jasper beside him, their hands clasped. He told their story: the photo, the arrest, the escape to Philly, the slow rebuilding with his father. His voice shook at first, but Jasper's steady presence grounded him. The crowd listened, some in tears, others nodding in solidarity. When Jasper spoke, his words were raw, unpolished, but powerful. "Love shouldn't be a fight," he said. "But when it is, you fight like hell." The applause was deafening. Afterward, people approached them, sharing their own stories: kids kicked out, parents learning to accept, couples defying the odds. Ethan felt a spark of purpose, something bigger than himself. Jasper, too, seemed lighter, as if speaking had unburdened him. Daniel was there, in the back, uninvited but present. He didn't approach, just watched, his face a mix of pride and pain. Ethan caught his eye and nodded, a small gesture that said, "I see you trying." Life settled into a new rhythm. Ethan finished his degree, landing a job at a nonprofit for queer youth. Jasper's art gained traction, his paintings selling at local galleries. They moved to a bigger apartment, one with a real bedroom and a view of the skyline. Their walls were covered in Polaroids: new memories, new moments, a testament to their resilience. Daniel visited monthly, each time a little less awkward. He started asking Jasper about his art, even bought a small painting for his office. It was a slow thaw, but it was real. Ethan began to believe that love could change even the hardest hearts. One evening, as they walked through Rittenhouse Square, Jasper stopped, pulling Ethan close. "You ever think about going back?" he asked. "Not to stay, but to show them who we are now." Ethan considered it. Willow Creek was a wound, but it was also home. "Maybe," he said, "but only if you're with me." Jasper grinned, kissing him under the streetlights. "Always." The idea took root. They planned a trip back, not to confront, but to reclaim. They'd visit Mia and Theo, walk the river, maybe even face the town that had tried to break them. Ethan wrote to Daniel, inviting him to join them for coffee at the diner. To his surprise, Daniel agreed. The drive to Willow Creek was quiet, the familiar roads stirring memories both bitter and sweet. When they pulled into town, Ethan's heart raced, but Jasper's hand in his was a steady anchor. The diner was the same as ever-checkered floors, vinyl booths, the hum of small-town gossip. Ethan and Jasper sat across from Daniel, the air thick with history. The other patrons glanced their way, some curious, some hostile. But Ethan didn't care. He was here to close a chapter, not to fight. Daniel looked older, his hair grayer, his eyes softer. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice steady. "Both of you." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. Jasper raised an eyebrow, but there was a flicker of warmth in his expression. "Thanks," Jasper said, his tone cautious but open. They talked really talk for the first time in years. Daniel shared stories of Ethan's mom, of his own struggles to change, of the support group that had become his lifeline. Ethan spoke of his work, his dreams, the life he and Jasper were building. Jasper listened, his hand resting on Ethan's under the table, a quiet claim of their shared strength. As they left the diner, Daniel handed Ethan a small box. Inside was a new Polaroid, one Daniel had taken at the community event. Ethan and Jasper, mid-laugh, their love undeniable. "I can't replace what I burned," Daniel said, "But I want you to have this." Ethan's throat tightened. He hugged his father. A real hug. One that felt like forgiveness, if not full trust. Jasper watched, his smile soft but real. They spent the day in Willow Creek, walking the river, visiting old haunts. Some faces were cold, but others friends. Former teammates greeted them with warmth, even pride. The town wasn't theirs anymore, but it didn't own them either. Back in Philly, Ethan taped the new Polaroid to their fridge, a symbol of something hard-won. Their life wasn't perfect, money was tight. Prejudice still lingered, and trust with Daniel was a work in progress. But they had each other, and that was enough. Years later, at their wedding, Daniel was there, in the front row, his eyes wet with tears. He gave a toast, his voice steady despite the emotion. "I almost lost my son," he said, "but he taught me what love really means." To Ethan and Jasper, "Mate, you always fight for each other." The crowd cheered, and Ethan and Jasper kissed, their hands clasped tight. The Polaroid from Willow Creek sat on their table, a reminder of the fire they'd walked through, and the love that had carried them out. Their story wasn't just theirs anymore. It was a beacon for others, kids in small towns. Parents learning to let go. Lovers refusing to hide. In the end, it wasn't the burned photo that defined them, but the ones they'd created since. Each a testament to a love that refused to be erased.